sure you've been watching the ongoings, I mean, in the past 1 week and the hashtag End Bad Governance protest. I mean, what's your review so far?
Well, protest itself is not unconstitutional. It's a legitimate right of every citizen, not only in Nigeria, but all over the world, to have a differing opinion from the opinion of those in government. So if you see, the policies that are being initiated in Nigeria, people think that they are anti-people. They are not in the interest of Nigerians, whether rightly or wrongly. I think they have a right to peaceful protest, and that is what we have seen over the past 1 week or so. For me, the most important thing is that government should listen to the people, and the people should listen to government. Because government cannot do without the people, just as the people cannot do without government. There should be a synergy. And how do we get these things going? Is to maintain peace and order in the units, in the federating units of the country. And this calls for dialogue, understanding, and of course, engagement, participation of citizens of the entire federating units and the country at large.
Okay, so Honourable, where do you think we've got it wrong in this set of protests? Because it looks as if the gulf between the citizens and government seems to be widening with what has happened over the last few days.
Well, I think what we have seen is the infiltration of the protest by hoodlums, destroying properties and threatening lives, and even sometimes coming into fatalities where people have reported to have died. I think these are the unfortunate aspects. As you can see, even now there are protests in UK. So protest itself is not bad. But when it comes to destruction of lives and properties, I think that is the most dangerous thing you can find in any system. And I call on the security agents to beef up their security and guide the protesters so that it can come to the desired, it can achieve the desired outcome. I think that would be my take on that.
All right, let's come to our guest here now in the studio. Honorable, we'll come back to you just in a moment. We also have joining us founder and national commandant of Peace Corps of Nigeria, Dixon Aka. Mr. Dixon, you're welcome to the program. And also civil society activist Austin Naiwe. Austin is also an election observer across Africa. Now, Austin, I'll start with you because I know that you have been in conversations over this hashtag End Bad Governance protest across board. And, he said it's a constitutional right. But if you look at the headlines this morning, you will see worrisome leading stories by the DSS saying that they've uncovered infiltrations. They are carrying out inquisitions across, board with 7 Polish nationals. The president is saying that foreign interference will not be allowed. Did you foresee this happening? And is it right to also say that these steps are in the right direction?
Thank you very much. FIMI, which is largely called foreign interference and manipulation, it's something that is already common. It's not just in Nigeria, it's everywhere. You recall far back in 2006, there was interference by Russia in the American elections. So it's not like FIMI is new, it's there. And for those who walk around disinformation, this is normal. You're going to see infiltration by foreign agents and all of that, especially when they see you as someone that is against their position, kind of. You know that right now in West Africa, Nigerian president is the chair of ECOWAS, and right now in ECOWAS there are 3 states of ECOWAS that is being controlled by Russia. And of course there are 4 states under military regime. These 3 states, when each of them took over military-wise, you saw those flags and all of that. It means there was a clear path. But linking that kind of trajectory to this Nigerian protest will be misplaced because they've got no correlation. The issue of Nigeria, if people want to, if there is that kind of regime change that is being peddled publicly, I think it's just to wait sentiment. If there was a regime change by protesters, I don't think they will go on protest. They won't do that. No protester, in the word of the military, will tell you bloody civilians can do the kind of thing you expect to happen. It's clear there are 2 different things. I think that when the DSS said they've had this information, which is good, information is key. Why don't you pick them? Why are you telling us? Go after. If I'm telling us means that you're actually giving these people signal to run away. You've got it, pin them, second them in, pick them one by one, and get them off and treat them as criminal. As it's being treated right now with as the CDS has said, all those who flaunt those flags are seen as committed treason. Why don't you pick them? That's why I sometimes have challenge with when security agents come ahead to tell you
about their actions.
Something they could have done without necessarily bringing it to the table. Media alone is not enough. You will tell us that we arrested these 20 individuals while picking up this flag at this location. Tell us that this Polish guy or this Russian were here organizing young people and we nipped them and we arrested them. Tell us after you have done it, not before it is done.
The thing for the protest was hashtag end bad governance and not hashtag Tinubu must go. If you compare that to what you saw in Kenya, where everyone said Ruto must go, isn't it also practical to say that sometimes misinformation could also create some of this intervention?
Ruto must go was after no to the bill, the finance bill. Yes. It was when Uroto delayed, I mean, if you follow that story very well, the people marched on the street to say, stop this finance bill. It is injurious to the people. And when Uroto refused to, and after all of the death, about 20 people already had died, they changed it. That we no longer want just finance bill to go. In fact, you know that Uroto eventually came out, suspended it, tried to change the government, tried to bring in opposition, tried to appeal to the people. They said, no, it is now too late. We are changing it. That is probably where the filtrators now come in. That's where FIMI may have come in. But at the beginning, it was clear. Stop finance bill. And if Ruto had stopped finance bill at the very time they started,
they probably wouldn't have been that. They probably wouldn't have been that
exactly.
escalation.
And that's exactly what we're also saying with the Nigerian protest. There was about a month notice of the protest. What the president did, very commendable, even though I may not agree with all of the things in his statement, very commendable. Showing up to even say, he said it, that he recognized that there's hardship.
Yes.
So that would have, if you had come like 2 weeks earlier, that I recognize this, but this is what we are trying to do, but just give me some time. You kept people in the dark, and you know where misinformation comes in? When you can't assess the truth. So when I need facts from you, and you are not giving it to me, I can then source for it, and when sources for it, there will be a lot of distortion.
Misinformation. Okay, let's bring in the National Commandant and founder of the Peace Corps, Dickson Akop. Now, there's been so many different versions of how security officials handled these protests. The security officials themselves said they did a fantastic job, while the protesters say nothing like that. What's your assessment of how the security officials handled these protests?
Well, I think the handling of the protesters and the protest itself, I think the security agencies, they've been fair enough. Why I'm saying this is like where challenges started coming in, when there's some people sponsor the counter-protesters to engage those who are protesting, in quote, against bad governance. And when things start generating into confrontation, you expect that security agency will come in. Recall that prior to the protest, my office addressed a World Press Conference where we said, yes, protest is constitutional, is the right of every citizen, but the fear is that those who infiltrate and rain violence upon the protesters, it will lead to something else. And that is the challenges we are having today. Counter-protests that came in, I think that is the position where challenges started coming in. And what is happening now is just a warning signal to the federal government. Yes, like our sister rightly put it, the protesters never advocate for Tinubu must go, but rather ain't bad governance. That is what we call warning signal. It's a warning signal indeed because if you look at the volume of youth that came out to protest, despite the build-up by the security, it showed that if nothing is done to pay or to take concerted effort to preoccupy our youth, the unemployed youth, because ordinarily, no youth that is engaged, meaningfully engaged and preoccupied, will avail himself the opportunity of being used to carry out uncanny acts That is the challenge we are having in Nigeria, whereby unemployment kept growing every day. You have our youth coming out from secondary school, tertiary institution, after NYC, nothing to do. They will be will be readily available to mischief makers to manipulate and then to carry out uncanny acts in the society. So we need to take urgent steps to see how youth could be adequately preoccupied. If you look at one of the issues that is happening, most of our leaders today in the society, in their youthful age, why even in secondary school, there are opportunities, so many windows of opportunity, like social organizations, such as Boy Scout, Mind No War, Girls Guide, all these things that even holiday, they normally take them to for leadership training, citizenship, where they build their capacity for future leadership challenges. Absolutely. But now, all these things are lost.
Okay, so let me come in here, still with you, Sadiq Sinako. In terms of, because he mentioned something quite, significant about communicating facts. And when you look at the way the security agencies communicate facts versus truth versus misapplication of that kind of information, it also creates a lot of ambiguity in the populace. And I say this because, on one hand, the Nigerian police is saying and admits that there was no live ammunition that was used. And then the military comes back to say, we did use some ammunition, and it was on our lead story. And the Nigerian Army confirmed that one of his personnel killed a teenager in Zaria, Kaduna State, during the recent #EndBadGovernance. So you look at that, you look at what the police is saying, you look at what the military is saying, you look at the response by the protesters who are saying we are going on a day, a week of mourning, people should have done black, people should, watch their utterances. How do you look at that as some of the ripple effects of bad communication, or perhaps not speaking to the truth?
For me, it's rather unfortunate that we are hearing or information that are coming from different angles are misplaced information. And I felt that in a situation like this, once we have something of national concerns we are having now, the Minister of Information ought to liaise with the Office of the National Security Advisor to have a centralized information there where they can disseminate information. Once we have that kind of setting in place, at least during national concerns we are having now, I think whatever is coming out from the different information being shown out by different security agencies wouldn't be. I advocate that when we have something like national protest or anything, national disaster or whatsoever, the Minister of Information should set up desks where all the head of the various military and paramilitary agencies, their information officer or public relations officer will meet, guided by the information ministry, for them to reconcile, harmonize whatever information that is being shown out to the public, and that is the best way to address.
In fact, it's pretty interesting that you should talk about the minister, because we actually have a clip we're about to play about what the minister had to say about the protests and a couple of other things on Wednesday.
Not an opponent. I want that to be noted. He is not an opponent of the right of citizens to protest. He's not an opponent of that. But from the reports that we have had, and from the history that we also have had in this country, we know that these protests were likely to be hijacked by miscreants, by other members of the Nigerian state who do not mean well for this country. And we have consistently said that in our messaging, that we are asking protesters to shelve these protests, not because we want to usurp their right to protest, but because we knew that once it began, it will no longer be the protest that we will all envisage. Now, the rest is history. We have seen what has happened, what has played out in the country. Within 12 hours of those protests, some people died, shops were being vandalized, buildings were being touched, vehicles were being damaged, businesses were forced to close within just the first 12 hours. But you know that in the first 1-2 hours of the protest, up to 3 hours, the police and the security agencies were extremely orderly in their approach. In fact, providing cover and support for the protesters. But every warning that government had given out for the orderliness of this protest fell on deaf ears. And we have seen what has happened in Kano, in Yobe, in Kaduna, in Sokoto, and many other parts of this country. No government will allow its country to slide into anarchy simply because a few people feel that Nigeria should not remain peaceful and united. And that was why the security agencies had to step in to do their job. But even in doing that, I'm just coming from a meeting of the diplomatic community. All of them have commended Nigerian security agencies for the maturity and for the professionalism that they have largely exhibited during those protests. Of course, there are unfortunate incidents, and the federal government is not happy about the loss of lives and property of citizens. There is no leader who wants to see his people suffer. Now, what are we trying to say? Is that now coming to the media, much as it is within the right of the media organizations to report activities and programs of government, report what is happening around them, care must be taken by media managers not to fall into the trap, the hand of these miscreants. At no time does misinformation, disinformation, and fake news flourish as when there's crisis. Sometimes you see clips, especially on the digital media, being rehashed. Clips of maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, even clips that happen in other climes being brought back to this country. And then we have also noted with some concern how some media organizations were covering this event as if we are covering World Cup. You hear day 1, day 2, day 3, as if we expect these days of the so-called days of rage, as the protesters have put it, to continue. I think from the day that the protesters said we're going to have 10 days of rage, it was enough signal, even to the media itself, to know that there is something that they need to see beyond this. So while we support you to do your job, while it is within your democratic right to cover events as they happen anywhere in this part of this country, we want to urge you and to employ you to be.
All right, pretty interesting comments coming from Mohammed Idris, Nigeria's information minister. Of course, we'll be getting reactions to what the minister said from our guests in a short while. But in the meantime, netizen Rena is in the house and she's going to bring us Kakaki Socials. Stay tuned for that. And if you are just joining us, we are taking up issues of the protests in Nigeria, the violence that has ensued, the demands of the protesters. And before we went for Kakaki Socials, we actually took a clip from what the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, had to say on Wednesday regarding the protest itself, government's role, the role of the media, and a number of other things. And we're going to get reactions to what the minister said from our guests joining us in the studio. We have the founder and national commandant of Peace Corps of Nigeria, Dixon Akor, and civil society activist Austin Aigbe. And joining us virtually, we have Honorable Bernard Miko, a former member of the House of Representatives. And Honorable Miko, we're going to start with you. You heard what the Honorable Minister said just before he went for Kakaki Socials. What do you make of what he said, especially the area where he says that government had been vindicated, calling for a halt of the protests?
Well, I listened to the Honorable Minister of Information, but it is very unfortunate that those in government, particularly at the federal level, we think that those that are not are the problems of this country. Similarly, those that are not in government also think that those that are in government are also the problem. I think we need a synergy. There are nuanced reasons for the protests all over the country. And I'm speaking from Rivers State. The main reason for the protests, why you see people coming out in Rivers State, might not be the same reason why they are protesting in Kano or other areas. In Rivers State, the police is our major problem. People in government from the national level are the problem of Rivers State. And that is why we are not happy that if the states, it is not the Russians that are our problem. It is ourselves that are our own problems in Nigeria. The Russians cannot rescue us. The issue of national flag of Russia is just a show of resentment, just as Nigerians know that our national pride is our national symbol of our sovereignty and pride, is our national flag and currency. People are spending, of course, the Nigerian naira, all the dollars all over and other currencies all over Nigeria, and nobody is talking about that. So I think that we should come to a conclusion or a kind of dialogue where people in government will see people outside government, the same way people in government see people outside government. Because in Rivers State, the police, they have occupied our local government and they don't allow our governor to function. These are not the Russians. So for us in Rivers State, we want cooperation between the center and the federating units. And that is why you see pockets of protest right in our states here. It is not because of the reason they are protesting in Kano. But I don't know why they are protesting in Kano. But hunger is a general problem that wasn't caused by this administration. The cause of hunger all over the world is as a result of insecurity. And of course, the changing climate and other reasons which cannot be addressed in one way. But we are against the use of police, of federal institutions, to suppress our people in Rivers State here.
Absolutely. Let's bring it back to our guest here in the studio, Austin. I mean, listening to what the Honorable Minister said, he talked about the role of the media, and when we kept previewing or giving sound bites to day 1, day 2, day 3, the days of rage, the title of the protest. But again, if the media is not in the forefront of that reportage, there might be some ambiguity in reporting facts versus propaganda, and that's what a lot of people have said. You just oppose this while you give me your response to what's happening in the UK riots, where every day, every second, there is feedback on what's happening in the centres, and the police is engaging, the ministries are engaging, and even the Prime Minister. And what that has done for the British people so far is to assuage their nerves and keep them in the conversation.
You see, I like what the Minister said, and in fact, the response from the Honourable Member just resonates something within me. Many years ago, in our student unionism, I remember leading a battle fight with the management of the university, and suddenly my professor, Professor F.E. Yoa, called me in one of those meetings and said, see, you don't get it. When I was on that side, I was seeing something else. So at some point in the future, you're going to see something else, because there's a movement, a shift. So the minister is now on one side, is no longer seen from the other side. For you to be a leader, you must be at the middle to be able to see from both sides. You can't sit as a minister looking at governmental perspective and trying to demean the other and maybe putting the range on the media. It is clear. What role does the media perform? It is to provide information, good information. All over the world, I'm even worried, maybe the minister, media cover war. World War was covered. Nigerian Civil War was covered. All over the world. You cover those incidents. It has advantages. Maybe that's what he's looking at. He's not looking at the advantages. To even tell people that, there's something wrong happening on those other sides. Let's try to stop it. The media perform a unique role in this, what they call it, days of range, because there was an advert for this protest. It was more than a month, or about a month, that it was going to be 10 days. And normally, the media will jump in to try to provide information on what is going on around the country. What the minister said by way of, we have been vindicated. No. Protest anywhere is always going to, at some point, turn to violence. What you do is to put strategies in place in a way that, as the commandant earlier said, they protected the protesters. In Kaduna, I am still trying to find out. Maybe that's what happened with the bullets. I can maybe just assume that that's probably what happened. Kaduna protest was going on peacefully. Very peacefully. They went towards the runabout, heading to the government house, and turned back. The next thing was that it became a blizzard. And there was it became disorder. What happened, I've been trying to find out in the last 3-4 days. Maybe that bullet would have been the reason. When that kind of thing happened, protest changes the course of action. That we wanted to be peaceful. You have not come with your force. Now let's go battle to battle. The same thing happened in the Yanyan Road here. When the protest, in fact, at some point there was no protest. There was no protest on that route. But the military had a blockade around Kugbo Mechanic, Kugbo Furniture, and then by the barracks. When vehicles were being monitored, because it was not like a long queue, before you know what was happening, folks were dropping from the vehicle. Gradually they started organizing, and when the crowd pulled out, it could not be resisted by the military, even with live bullet. And I've said it elsewhere, the live bullet shot at the Kugbo Furniture, I mean, these are names that people may go and find out. At the Kugbo Furniture, went over into Kugbo town, opposite the Kugbo Parlor, the bullet hit somebody on the hand. If it had hit that individual on the head, he would have died. But was the fellow part of the protest? No. So these are some, when we do protest, we need to be very careful. I mean, there are like bullets, there are rubber bullets, and all manner of bullets, there are tear gas. They exist. You don't deploy live bullets. But again, you can't take that away from the military. The military does not, I mean, they are not civil authority. They are engaged for a purpose. When you deploy them, you get that this is, but just to also put on record that the military have become also very professional. I've listened to a lot of military folks in this protest, even with the NSAS protest, the way they engage. Even sometimes engage more than the police.
Absolutely.
You see the military engaging and saying, calm down. In one of the videos that trended in NSAS, one military officer was actually quarreling with the police officer to say, please, no, don't go that way. Let me talk to them. Please don't fire. I'm giving you now an order. Man, I was so happy. That professionalism. We saw the police commissioner of Edo in this protest, actually addressing protesters and telling them, greatest Nigerians to youth. And you saw that, you gather the people, you organize them, because you are far ahead of them, because you don't want to get to the point where you have to use your arms. Because your arms is for your defense. If those people attack you, you can actually use your arms for your self-defense. And that you can no longer blame the police.
But sorry to come in here. The stance of the Honorable Minister, you know, on a lot of reviews, when that news also came on, people seem to think that it could also create a sense of, you know, silence, you know, from media operators, you know, some whether on social media, because for them it also seems like a subtle warning, you know, to cease from promoting or giving avenue to news that creates some sort of bad, you know, light or branding for the government. How is that also very dangerous?
You know, we are going to maybe soon. I hope that the MBC has not started sending letters. You know, we used to see that in the last administration when commentaries are made, or you just see letter, 5 million. We hope that is not his intention, and he must be very careful. And I think he also alluded to the fact that the president is not anti-protest.
Absolutely.
And that the president led protest. In fact, he spoke out. You know, that's why sometimes comments you made years ago, we always come back. The internet never forgets. They will come back to you to remind you of the things you said. We saw that now happening within the current members of the National Assembly, members of the State Executive Council, and all of those involved in politics, of what they said years ago. And that was what I was telling you. As at when the minister was on the other side, maybe in opposition, what would he have said about this protest? Now that he's on the other side, he's seen it differently. Let's learn to always speak truth to power. when your principal is not doing the right thing, find a way to tell him, but you don't have to tell him publicly, but you don't also have to put a burden on the people. You can't, the minister knows how many phone calls he gets a day of people running straight to the hospital, of something happening in the home, of another thing happening. I know he has a way of not picking those numbers. They have PAs who deal with those issues. But you and I, on this studio, every one of us in this studio, both my commandant, the cause, because it's holding a position, people, there will be an hurricane of family members, extended family members, who have not eaten for 1 week, there is something actually happening in this country. There is hunger, and that's the organizing team around the protest. The president can truly deal with hunger. But my position, not palliative. Palliative cannot solve the problem.
So Austin, we're going to get to that. I just also want to get the commandant's view of what is his take home or the high points for you from what the Honourable Minister said just before he went on that break.
Well, for me, without the media, it would have spelled doom for a lot of people. For you to be informed or where violence is taking place and where you have to go and where not to go, the kudos goes to the media. Again, he has made a point very, very significant, and that is where I would deal with mostly. I think the issue of hunger, poverty, unemployment in the land is something that gave birth to this protest. And for me, I spoke in your program yesterday via Zoom, and I say, yes, these are the indicators that gave rise to the protest. And the commander-in-chief has came out openly in his address and say, I acknowledge that this is real. Give me the opportunity for me to address it, though it may take time. I think that alone have opened the door for those who are the protesters to organize themselves and go before Mr. President or his agent to express their grievances in order to profess solution. Now, my stake is that we also discuss issues that have to do with the police and the army handling of the present situation. For me, they are fair enough in the sense that while I condemn the killings from whatever angle, whether from the police and the army, number one, the army has owned up. We need to give kudos to them. It's a sign of professionalism and civility, and the fact that they are coming to terms with the civil populace. If you compare it with what would have happened during previous regime, it would have been bloody. You understand me? So we have to give them, at a time when you see a project, the dimension it is taking, if they don't react in some way, before now, even by now, some people like us wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to even come here. So we want to, I want to say that what is happening now is enough for those who are in position of authority to come together. Like for me, ordinarily before the protest, the protesters started singing, you understand me, giving indication that they are going on protest. That is enough for some government officials to start engaging them, not to have allowed the protest to take place at all.
That was what some people said. That some of the comments we're hearing from government officials now that the protest is it's supposed to be in its 8th day today.
They say you should not be saying it.
Wow. Okay, sorry, Honourable Minister, if you're watching. But, I mean, it's supposed to be in its 8th day, exactly. All right? And it's only now we're beginning to hear some reconciliatory comments. If you look at some of the headlines, it says Tinubu begs Nigerians. We're hearing one or two comments here. And it's being believed that if probably some of those comments had come, like what the commandant alluded to, had come a few weeks ago, when they were notified of these protests, perhaps we would be where we are today.
Yes, I do agree. That's why I said at the initial commentary, I said if the president had shown up early enough, 2 weeks ahead of the August 1, to say, see, this is the problem with having subsidy on petroleum product. We discovered, this is my analysis. You know what Nigerians believe? It may be fake news, but Nigerians believe that on day one of the current administration, the president, without any basis for policy framework, announced the removal of fuel subsidy. No benchmark, no clear pathway. And the problem, the comment
no time frames.
No time frame. And as at that time, there were information that Nigerians also have that the outgoing president at that time had paid subsidy up to June. Meanwhile, you are removing it on May 29th. By May 29th, immediately after that speech, petroleum product and gas stations changed their fuel price, even though they already earned subsidy for it. Nobody was arrested. Immediately, the policy statement came. Not a policy, it's a policy statement. Because there is no document at that May 1 that you are going to hold on to say, this is it. Policy has a process. Policy is not a statement. Policy look at problem, look at what possible solution, look at possible impact, and develop some certain measure in place by reason of data. But apparently, that didn't happen. And immediately, prices went high. People are saying that the suffering we are in today is as a result of that one commentary. But you cannot blame the president, because during his campaign, he said, in fact, literally all the major campaigns
said the same thing.
Said the same thing. But the approach may be different.
All right,
I think it's the approach.
Let's get back to Honorable Bernard. And, you know, I mean, you've listened to what our guest said. Again, going back to approach, Amnesty International said they condemned the use of lethal force against the protesters, stating that the security personnel used tactics designed to kill while dealing with gatherings of people protesting hunger and deep poverty. And, you know, when you see the police squad, the military squad and all of that, if you watch it on the news, you probably also think that there is something happening, that it was a riot. Just suppose that with the UK riots. I mean, on their major news, they are not saying protesters. They're saying UK riots. So it means that it's something anti-government, anti-people, and so they're deploying all measures. And even at that, they are not using ammunition. They're using conversation. They're using, you know, pre-warning signals. Do you think that perhaps there would be a different approach by the agencies to communicate the affairs to these people before actually looking at ammunition?
Well, you can see that the situation in UK is based on their own values, culture, and how the police force and security agencies in UK evolved in the first place. The case of Nigeria is quite different. We inherited a colonial force, colonial police force, colonial system that has given us the values for which we have now. So when you talk of governance, in Nigeria, you are talking of use of force. You are talking of exercise of authority over the ordinary people. So the police in Nigeria, I think they need to be trained to be civil. We need a civic national ethics to deal with the local environment. And of course, education is key to how our people will react to civil authority, to even religious and other types of organizations that exist. So the issue of hunger has been explained even by politicians, even by those in government now. While being in opposition, they have been, you know, they have campaigned for violent, engagement of the government. And that is why you see people are angry. The social media is very active as to these events. How people now in government were saying otherwise before, and people that are in government then are now outside doing the same thing. How can we now put synergy together? For us in Rivers State, we are worried beyond the 10-day protest. The civil war is very, very is alive in our memory. How after the civil war, we are still battling with areas of environmental degradation. Rivers State is the hub of economic activity that even fuels other activities all over the world. So if these protests are not properly handled, either by the police or by any other security agencies or whatever, you know, it will go beyond. Because the oil spill, if it escalates, the problem that will happen in the river will affect the whole Nigeria, not only Nigeria, the whole world, that it will go beyond the next 40, 50 decades in Nigeria. So I think the police should go and learn a lesson. And of course, the education of the public, you know, the citizens, is also very important, so that they know the limits of their liberty. They know the limits of their actions, so that they don't engage the authorities in a way that is unconstitutional or illegitimate. Just the same way, where I think we need a whole lot of orientation of our people. Politics is a mirror of the society. What you see in UK is based on their own values. What you have in Nigeria is based on how did we get here? I think that is the main question that should agitate the minds of families, individuals, and organizations, including the media.
Very interesting. Let's get back to the studio. Although the protesters say that their grouses are hinged primarily on the removal of fuel subsidy, the flotation of the exchange rate, and to a large extent, security. But Honorable Miko did say that, look, I mean, different people, the underline is that different people are protesting for different reasons. Okay, Commandant, do you see it that way?
Yes, I think when I started by laying emphasis on the issue of unemployment. And the youths, they clearly came out and expressed themselves. No job. And even some of this palliative the federal government normally give, does it really find its way to the grassroots? No. So some of these issues as one of the basis that triggers the current protest. So if the issue of unemployment in Nigeria can be adequately addressed, and also, Mr. President, also, like I said earlier, had owned up to the issue, acknowledge the hunger in the land. For me, these are the basis of the action of the present situation that we find ourselves in the country. If the twin issues can be handled, as far as what led to this process is concerned, I think we'll have a relative peace and a calmness in the society. So for me, basically, steps must be taken to address the unemployment question in Nigeria. And steps must also be taken because if we say yes, whatever is happening, the state of economy, the fragile situation is not affecting even us, that means we are lying. So positive steps need to be taken. And even before the protest, I caution against criminalizing the protest or threat and counter-threat, that it will generate into what I foresee it, and I caution even the government official not to take any step to try to counter any form of counter threat, because it will always result to what we are passing through now.
Well, I think that first, like Commandant said, there were some level of pro-government protester. In fact, I think it was one of your short videos I saw, which is still trending, where a young fellow was addressing the press, and he was holding no protest, but what he was saying was anti-no protest.
So there is hunger in the land.
There's hunger in the land. So that hunger in the land resonates across the board. You see, when crisis is going to start, for those who know about conflict management, conflict theory, there's usually an organizing force. Whether River State likes it or not, what brought them to the table of the protest was the organizing force of bad governance. And what they see as bad governance may differ from those in Kaduna, which is correct. I mean, these are two dynamics. This is more of theoretical underpinnings. Yes. But the truth is, there's some underlying fact that when you talk about subsidy, in fact, arguably, right now, okay, before I say that, subsidy for me is a public good. It does impact the rich and the poor. It's like a road. A road is a public good. The rich uses the road, the poor does the same thing. But if you block that road, the impact on the poor will be more than the impact on the rich, because the rich can have access to other routes with their vehicles. But the poor individuals,
they can also fly.
They can also fly. Now you see the roads now leading to a certain part of the country from Abuja isn't accessible the way it is, but the rich can always go over. What I'm saying is that when you remove that kind of public good, there are measures that need to be in place, which the president thought it was going to be CNG, which I don't know if your car is already CNG, which of course may be palliative, and of course the government, the federal government, is bringing to us huge amount of resources that they are sending to the states, and that go and ask your state. We know that when you remove the subsidy because of the inefficiency in the system, rather than have the burden, the incident of the removal on the ordinary individuals, why don't you target those causing the inefficiency? You are the government. After God is government. Identify the inefficiency, bring them to book. If they are not members of your cabal, you know, I'm not asking them to go after their cabal because it exists. You can't really deal with your friend. Let me put it that way. But there are others who may not be part of. Use those ones to start. Call your cabal members and can we allow? Let me walk. I want the people to. Let the people love me. Deal with those inefficiencies. We are aware by certain former CBN governor, and of course, in fact, it was a national debate, that people bring invoices without supplying the fuel product. Identify those. How does our subsidy fuel go over to Cameroon, go over to Niger? Identify, block those loopholes. You are the government. And then see within the next 3, 4, 5 months, see what you can do, and then begin to slowly remove some. You can gradually increase from that 149 or so that it was to 150, 200. Build up. You don't remove. It's almost like a very weird scenario.
Well, the president has said there's no going back on that. I mean, he's made the policy statement at the time when he made it, and now the policy action is now taking place. So, I mean, what's the way forward? Because as of Wednesday yesterday, the protesters and the organizers said they would hold a 3-day mourning period till Friday to mourn the loss of lives of those who went by, force and the influence of the ammunition that was targeted at some of the protesters across the other states, and also hold a candlelight procession for them, everyone wearing black. I want to see, what do you think the government can do with that kind of pronouncement? Is there room for a public apology, perhaps, for those who lost their lives unwillingly, even though they were innocent in that process?
Well, you would say that the president already apologized. It was sorrowful for the people who died. I mean, that is clear.
Okay.
People mourning now is for the security agencies to now say this is mourning period and not protesting period. There are two different periods.
Absolutely.
But just to quickly add that when the president said no going back on subsidy, can you truly go and find out? Let me give the work investigative journalism now. Go and find out if we are not already paying subsidy on petroleum products. Because the cost of the amount of dollar today
on the international market,
in the international market, which is supposed to be the free market economy that the president proposed using Adam Smith's orthodoxy, is that let the invisible hand of demand and supply control. Right now, fuel, I mean, $1 on the alternate market is over 1,500. We are still buying fuel.
So it should be ordinary should be a lot higher than what we're paying.
Minimum would have been 1,200 or 1,300 or 1,000 naira. Why are we paying less? Subsidy may, I'm not saying it, may have been reintroduced. Nigerians don't need to be informed, because if you are informed, you are going to be, the president, they will not tell you your policy has failed. It's rather, he kept it under, but after this regime, it may be in 8 years, maybe in 4 years, we are going to be aware, at some point in the life of this administration, that subsidy has been reintroduced, but we never knew.
Okay, Commandant, what do you make of the current state of things? Like, Adora pointed out, there's a 3-day period of mourning for the protesters that lost their lives. And it seems that even before that period of mourning was made, like, it looked as if things were gradually waning. The protests were actually waning in a lot of places. Where do you see the protests going from here, even after the 3-day mourning period?
Well, if you look at the counsel to the protesters, ACN, what did they call him? He did advise the protesters to limit these protests to 3 days in the first place. And
that's Adegboruwa.
SAN. Had it been the leadership of the protesters have a clear call leadership structure, they would have adhered to the call of the Adegboruwa SAN, and that first 3 days would have given government, this is our concern, this is our grievances. If nothing is done about that, in the next 2, 3, 4 months, we'll come back full-fledged protest. I think they would have gotten the deserved sympathy they deserve. Then already.
Are you saying that they probably aren't getting this sympathy?
No, I'm coming.
Okay, sorry.
What I say, well-deserved sympathy.
Okay.
And for the life that have been lost, I agree with them. If any action is taken or not action, any approach is adopted to ensure that they mourn with their loss. We can say Nigerians should be mourning, even if it is one life that is lost. So I agree with them. And the government should be able to deploy security to protect them so that they can mourn. And on our own, as ordinary citizens of the country, our thought and prayer should also be with them, as well as the lives that were lost.
All right, let me go back to Honorable Bernard virtually. Honorable, I mean, you heard what Austin said about subsidy removal or quiet subsidy return. And, I remember quite well that the World Bank in December said there was a partial return of the fuel subsidy in a report that was presented here in Abuja. And they said it justified the claim because the official exchange rate then, the petrol should sell around 750 per litre and not 650 naira currently being paid by Nigerians as of that time. And again, the Nigerian Petroleum, Corporation Limited did not come out to whether deny it or deem it fit. And so people did say perhaps there is a subtle return of subsidy backdoor. Do you think these are some of the clarifications perhaps the government should make and maybe remove the opaqueness on information, interpretation?
Yes, I think I agree with you that there seems to be a huge gap between the government and the people, to the extent that the people feel that they've not been told the truth about activities of those in government and governance. To that extent, I don't want to rely on any quotation or any rhetorics by World Bank. These are imperial institutions that have not helped our country, and anything about them. We have ways of solving our internal problems by ourselves here. Subsidy itself is not a bad thing. All over the world, education has been subsidized, agricultural products have been. You have marketing boards where products were bought. My father was an agent during his youth for marketing boards. So they buy products from the rural areas so that they don't get bad, and stock it with government and sell it at the appropriate price. So it is the abuse, the corruption in the system that is making things worse. And what we are saying, we are not saying that the government now is bad or otherwise. We are saying that these things can be managed to the extent of benefits to the people. And I keep talking that the states are the federating units in this management of affairs. The federal government is a virtual entity. It doesn't exist if the states are working. So if the states are allowed to function, because we in Rivers State, it will go beyond this strike of either 3 days or 10 days, because the consequences of anarchy in Rivers State will affect oil production. In Rivers State, it affects everything. I'm from Ogoni. And what happened during the war, we still live on environmental degradation. We can go and look at the UNEP report. These are reports from the same international organizations like the World Bank. These are organizations that, so in making any reference, I don't want to hear anything about World Bank. I want to hear Nigerians.
But they give us loans and we take them, and they pursue some of our monetary policies as well on behalf of our country. So, I mean, when they give rhetorics like that, whether you like it or not, sometimes it's also instructive, because backdoor, it seems as if they also influence decisions.
Yeah, because we borrow money from them.
All right, I think let's get back to the studio. That everybody, we all seem to be, well, all our panelists seem to be in agreement that maybe subsidy itself is not exactly a bad thing. There should be some safety nets, for the people. But people seem to be talking about dealing with the, the loopholes, the corruption in the system. So maybe it's time for people who want to advise government to probably focus a lot more on the issue of corruption, because many people have said that it doesn't matter what policy you come on. If corruption isn't really dealt with, then there's nothing's going to work. What would it take for there to be a lot more focus on the issue of corruption for government to actually take that just as seriously?
So I have advocated, I think the president has begun with it, I think he can process further, is that it's the issue of local government autonomy. Okay. The challenge with the Nigerian state is that we have a unitary system where everything comes from the federal or the national government. It seems to me, like the House of Representatives former member said, is that the federating state, because sometimes we use this federating state very loosely. These states are not really federating states. They were created states, unlike federating states like the U.S., where there's a union among all the states to join. Not the way there's one president or head of state who announces the creation of one certain state. It's different, but we have to adopt with our own federalism. There are different kinds. The Indian federalism is different from the U.S. model. Of course, it's different from the way we operate in Nigeria. Yes. But we can operate our model in a way that suits. And I think that what the president has done is in the right direction. This aspect of ensuring that the true thought here of Nigerian federalism does work, and that's the local administration. If you've done that, if we play low on seeing the president as the omega, we will gradually bring down development. We'll bring governance low. The closest government to the people is the local government administration. In the 776 local government, 774 local government administration in this country, arguably, there may be just one or a handful of them who are truly close to the people. And that is why all attention is to the president. And again, if you take it with all due respect, why would a president, not this president, maybe previously, a president going to commission borehole? A president, a whole Nigerian president, going to commission market stores. And here he's cutting one tape and opening a market. For Christ's sake, that is too demeaning. Because the conceptualization of the federalistic system of Nigeria is to have a president that is strong, going by the pitfall of the regional government that we had. So we have a president that is strong, who could actually muster the power to deal with the federating state and organize them. But we have not gradually seen that the theory of them is no longer practicable today. There's too much attention on the central, like Peter Eke will say in his corruption work, like you have talked about, dealing with corruption. Peter Eke came up with two publics. All right. The civic culture and the premier culture. Deal with it, and we are good.
Okay, so I guess we're going to have to leave it like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was going to go to the Honourable, but we don't have enough time on the role of Parliament because, of course, we saw the Committee on Oil and Gas and the back and forth on, money is exchanging hands and not, and how that also speaks to the parliamentary role of governance in this kind of saga. But
okay, gentlemen. Many thanks for your time and useful insight. We'll be speaking with civil society activist Austin Aigbe, who is also an election observer across the continent. We've also been joined by Commandant of Peace Corps and its founder, Dixon Akor. And joining us virtually, we had former member of House of Representatives, Honorable Bernard Miko. Many thanks for your time and very useful insight indeed.
And that brings us to the end of the show as well.
Absolutely.
Kept the day up. Well, thank you for joining us and being part of this, and please keep